Cool. Well,
Oh,
thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to do a quick introduction. So I do apologize for the delay, everybody that is logged in. So my name is Muhammad Al-Garmi. I'm the College and Career Director at AAYSP in the California chapter. We have Hisham, who is the president of AAYSP, joining us as well. And this is just another monthly installment that we have via Zoom that focuses on college and career opportunities. Alhamdulillah, we're blessed with the opportunity to have Ali Al-Garmi present on the job application process. He is the executive recruiter at Robinhood, and he has worked in the field of tech for the last 10 years or so. If you have any questions, you can wait until the end, but if there is something that pops up or jumps out at you during the presentation, you can feel free to raise your hand, and Ali will try his best to answer those questions during and after the presentation. So without further ado, go ahead, Ali, whenever you're ready.
Cool. Thanks for the introduction, Mohammed. Assalamu alaikum, everybody that is on here live and will be watching later. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk, and hopefully you take away some helpful insights on your job hunt and the job application process. So kicking things off, I'll just introduce myself. I got my start in recruiting on the agency side. So working at a staffing agency back in 2011, working on recruiting for, all the well-known tech companies in Silicon Valley and throughout the Bay. It was more of a third-party role, meaning that in the staffing agency, you are kind of playing matchmaker, where you find candidates looking for open opportunities, and you help several different companies find these candidates, and you place them successfully at these roles. I really fell in love with recruiting at kind of like my first taste of it on the agency side. But on the agency side of recruiting, it's very commission driven. It feels a lot like sales, and it doesn't really feel like company building. So I wanted to go in-house, and I took a shot on a company called TubeMogul. It was a small advertising technology company based out of Emeryville. I joined them very early on when they were still about 70 employees total. I stayed on for about 5 years and just saw all the different chapters of growth in my time at TubeMogul, from being a post Series B funded startup to about 3 years in, we went public after having our IPO. And then 2 years after that, getting acquired by Adobe. It was my first in-house recruiting position, working directly for a company to recruit for that company. So I really got to see the fruits of my labor as I brought in engineers and product manager. And I didn't mention this, but I've been purely on the technical recruiting side, so recruiting technical folks. So really got to see that company grow, made a lot of deep, long-lasting relationships, folks that I'm still in touch with till today. In the field of recruiting particularly, your most valuable asset is your network. So you want to be kind to people, you want to have strong relationships, because you never know when things come back around full circle and you end up working with former colleagues again who are now currently present colleagues. So as I mentioned, TubeMogul eventually ended up getting acquired by Adobe. I ended up taking some time off shortly after the acquisition. I helped Adobe kind of with that acquisition of TubeMogul and kind of our recruiting programs that were existing in the Emeryville office. And now it's a full-fledged Adobe office. And I decided to move on and take another opportunity, which was to lead the entire recruiting department for a fintech startup based out of Oakland, which was called Marqeta, who, cool enough, Marqeta actually just had their IPO earlier this month in June. I, again, joined really early on, kind of one of the first 100 employees when it was post Series C stage funded company. Really saw the company grow. By the time I left, we were at about 600 employees globally, built out a recruiting team. I was the first recruiter there, and created just kind of a recruiting department and a recruiting engine that can run on its own, before being approached by Robinhood and kind of jumping on this opportunity. I've been with Robinhood since early March, and really enjoying every minute of it. So throughout my journey, I've done different flavors of recruiting, but it's primarily been focused on technical roles, specifically engineers. So a lot of the things that I talk about today may be slightly skewed towards, optimizing your job search within the tech industry. But I do want to be clear that there are a lot of general themes that are applicable to just your job search and job hunt in general, regardless of the industry. Just click on here. And just a quick disclaimer. So the views and opinions shared in today's presentations are the views of my own and are not reflective of my present or any of my former employers. I want that to be really clear because this is what I think could be some good tips and tricks. And then it's always up to you to use your best judgment on how you approach your job search. But I think there are some cool insights that you can take away from this presentation today. And it all starts with a resume. You know, when you start out your job search, it's kind of one of the first things you're going to want to do is get your resume in order. And throughout my time, it's been interesting how, you know, in the past, you thought you needed this really long resume. You got to be really formal. You got to have the cover letter. We're in the age of speed and efficiency, and there are so many applicants. It's all about what catches the eye and what's most relevant. So there's a few do's and don'ts that are really high level and basic that I threw on here to share with you all. So one thing to keep in mind is that a resume is not a storybook or autobiography of every single thing that you've done in your life. Really, the modern day resume has evolved to being an elevator pitch or your calling card, your business card, right? So on that front, you want to try to keep your resume to one page when possible. And also you want to tailor your resume to the jobs you're seeking as much as possible. A lot of times, especially if you're early career or you haven't really got a start in your career, you feel compelled to put something on the resume and you just start putting things in there as filler. You know, maybe you put that you worked at a store for 5 or 6 years just to show that your work ethic and you've been working hard. But that actually can work against you sometimes. Most recruiters are just looking for relevancy, even if it's, you know, a 12 to 18 month volunteer or internship. As long as it's relevant and closely related to the job that you're applying for, that beats out 5 or 6 years of just general work experience. So my recommendation would be to remove anything that's irrelevant from what you're actually applying to. Also, something to note is that if your resume is only one page, you can slightly tweak it each time depending on the role that you're applying to. Although most of the roles that you apply to should generally be within the same ballpark. You should generally know what it is that you're looking for, make a goal to try to get your way towards that, you know, walk down that path and apply to those related roles. Just something more of just kind of a formality that a lot of people don't think about is just kind of the formatting of your resume. This is just something to keep in mind. To avoid potential formatting issues, you should always submit your resume in the form of PDF. It just looks a lot cleaner. And I have a couple of example resumes here to share with you all. One is just kind of like a sample early career resume. And this was actually built off of just using a Google Doc template. So this is just a quick sample resume that I helped a friend build. You can build it off of the template, off of Google Docs. And then to save it as a PDF, you can just click on the printer icon, click on Save as PDF, and it should be right there. Or you can simply just go to File, Download as a PDF. And again, this is the template that's based off of Google Docs. Something to note, the summary is direct and to the point, it's succinct. It talks about what this person is looking to accomplish, right? Self-motivated, results-oriented team player with a passion for sales. This is the key part right here. I'm a recent UC Davis grad looking to find a role as a sales consultant at any big firm or corporation. If you have a good summary and it's straight and to the point, this can actually replace a cover letter in most cases. And I'll show you on kind of the example of my resume up next, what I did when I kind of applied for jobs instead of using a cover letter. When it comes to the bullet points, again, you don't need to explain every single thing that you did at your job. You want to try to keep it as high level as possible and really just try to abbreviate and summarize the main things that you accomplished in your time at that role. And then on the side over here, if there are things that you really feel compelled to add and you don't want to have them be left out, you can quickly mention them. So previous internship experience at the district attorney's office and at the YMCA, like I can write a whole page on just what this person did at the YMCA, but just from a very high level, just know that this person mentored children ages 5 to 10 with both outdoor and indoor activities. Like try to keep the fluff to a minimum. Other things to mention over here is the address. You'll notice that there's no physical address. Traditionally, when you're building out a resume, you put your exact home address, where you live, all that good stuff. That can actually work against you. That kind of opens you up to potential discrimination based off of location. And I'll give you an example scenario. Say 2 equal candidates applied for a job that's based out of San Jose. They went to the same school, they have the same exact work experience, but one of them lives in the East Bay, and they're more than willing to commit to the commute and drive. But the other candidate lives in San Jose in itself. The recruiter or HR or whoever, maybe even the hiring manager, might just opt to go for the person that lives closer. So to work around this, just like put San Francisco Bay Area or the large metropolis area that you live in, whether it's greater New York City area. You don't need to put your exact address, put a generalized location so you can shield yourself from potential location discrimination. And then another cool thing that I like to do, since everything is electronic these days, there's not really any paper resumes, just hyperlink your email address for one-click access. Phone number, you still want to keep it in there, obviously. And then you can always just kind of hyperlink to your LinkedIn profile. It's always a good idea. LinkedIn profile is really what brings your candidacy to life, kind of from the perspective of visualizing who someone is as a candidate and how they present themselves. And we'll talk about LinkedIn in a little bit. But let me go back to the presentation. I can quickly go over the don'ts, and then I can go over my resume as well. Again, as mentioned before, don't write a book. Be concise and only highlight the key accomplishments. On the don't side, I put do not exceed 2 pages. Preferably keep your resume to 1 page if possible. I can guarantee if your resume is over 2 pages, I don't think recruiting departments will have the time to read every single thing beyond 2 pages. Again, as I mentioned, don't add your physical address. Instead, add a URL to your LinkedIn profile. For you developers out there, add a link to your GitHub. For you designers or anyone that has any body of work that exists somewhere online, you can have like a link to your portfolio, etc. And as mentioned, physical address will open yourself up to potential discrimination based off of location or commute distance. Now, sharing the...
Ali, Murad has a quick question. Do we have time to take questions now, or did you want to wait until the end of the presentation?
No, of course.
Okay, so let me go ahead and... Murad, I think you can go ahead and unmute yourself now.
That's fine. I was wondering if it's a good idea to add hobbies on the resume.
That's a really good question. It does bring your personality to life, but I don't know how much value added it is. You might want to be careful to overshare. If it's a questionable hobby or something crazy, it's like how much, always try to think about weighing the pros and cons. Adding this hobby, will it do more good or will it do more harm? Me personally, I like to see that on a resume just to get to know the candidate on a personal level, but it's not really that important if I'm being honest. But that's a good question. That's also something that's, from more traditional resumes in the past, people put their hobbies. Again, not an absolute requirement. If you were forcing me to choose, I would say just leave it out. It'll give you more space to fit within 1 page for your core experience and skill set to be showcased.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I add something to that or no?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you're right. It might sometimes work in your favor, sometimes work against you could be, but yeah. But if let's say you're doing a hobbies that volunteering and they're looking for somebody who is like team buildings and doing all the stuff, sometimes managers might favor these. Like, let's say you are volunteering for STEM programs or women programs or stuff like that. It might show some beside the technicals. We had a recent hires. She put some of the hobbies that and they were like impressive, but it could go against you sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that you bring up a really good point, Ahmed. If it's related to the job that you're seeking, right? Like
exactly.
My hobby, I enjoy mentoring at-risk youth or whatever, and you're applying for like a counselor role. If it's, again, it's all about relevancy while remaining efficient. If you're talking about you like ping pong, basketball, football, et cetera, fantasy football, like use your space on your page wisely because it's valuable real estate. If it's a hobby that you can directly tie into a value add for yourself as a candidate in direct relation to what the job will be seeking, then yeah, I fully agree with you, Ahmed. That's a good idea. Cool. So I mentioned earlier kind of the replacement of the cover letter. The cover letter is one of the most daunting tasks, especially if you're going to be applying to multiple roles. You're thinking, I'm a fresh grad. I'm trying to apply to all of these different positions. Do I seriously have to sit here and write a cover letter for each one? This may sound controversial, but the answer is actually no. You do not need to write a cover letter each and every single time. Now, when you're in the job search and you cast a wide net, you may have those top 3 roles that you're super, super excited about and you're willing to go above and beyond to get noticed. Then yeah, in that case, maybe you could write a very concise cover letter as to why you feel specifically for this role, you're a direct match. It's your opportunity directly to speak directly to the hiring team. But if it's just a generalized cover letter filled with fluff and you're not directly speaking to that opportunity, then it's probably better off just leaving it out completely. Again, my recommendation would be you can create a professional summary, right? That's kind of an abbreviated way to describe who you are, what it is that you're looking for, and it can serve as a recurring cover letter. That's kind of what I did in my job search. So I had this professional summary that's over here, and I applied to roles. I applied to the role at Robinhood, and I didn't use a cover letter, and I got the job. You can use this approach for a generalized kind of job hunt when you're applying to multiple positions. And then again, keep in mind, if it's that dream job that you're seeking and deep down in your gut and in your heart that I am a match for this position, that's where you want to go the extra mile and you want to write a dedicated cover letter. And it doesn't have to be super formal, again, like with your address and all of that stuff, or dear hiring manager, yada, yada, yada. Speak with your true voice, because I can tell you that speaking with a true voice is recognized a lot more than someone trying to stay super formal or super proper. Don't be afraid to be yourself, but use respectful language, obviously. And then moving on. So that's kind of, before I move too fast, I just want to see if there's any more questions in regards to kind of just the basics of the resume and kind of this high level overview.
It doesn't look like anybody has their hand raised. I dropped in the chat that, again, feel free to ask questions anytime for participants that are logged in by either raising your hand or you can use the chat function, whatever you guys are comfortable with.
Cool. So we'll move on. And we'll talk about LinkedIn a little bit. So in my opinion, LinkedIn is what really brings your resume to life and is regularly used by hiring teams to get to know prospective candidates beyond their typical resume. A lot of times when, recruiters get applications, they'll quickly try to find this person's online presence, or they'll Google search their first name, last name, and then LinkedIn, right? So if nothing pops up and you're in the job market, that's one thing. But if something else pops up, LinkedIn profile, and it's really bare, it doesn't really tell much of a story. So here are a few just kind of different tips and tricks and pieces of advice that I think can be valuable. You want to start by choosing the right profile picture. Humans are visual beings, and really this is your first impression to prospective employers. You want a nice headshot I did put a quick note in here, you know, if you're not comfortable with using your own picture due to cultural or personal reasons, try finding a clever alternative like an avatar picture of yourself. This is more towards obviously the female population of our Yemeni community. If they're not comfortable with sharing a picture, use an avatar or something. Don't just leave it blank. The summary section is similar to kind of the professional summary on the resume. You want to use it to tell your story, right? Do not use this space as merely place to fill up with job-seeking buzzwords. That doesn't really do much help. And again, you want to make sure you're actually telling your story sincerely, as well as what your goals or aspirations are. I'm a new grad. I'm highly interested in human resources. I want to drive myself towards a career in recruiting, right? And grow your network. That's actually the main purpose of LinkedIn. It's a professional networking site. You should try your best to connect and interact with individuals in the fields that you're seeking to get into. You know, connect with others and offer time for coffee chats to learn more about their backgrounds and seek mentorship and guidance. And this bullet point is not just for people that are earlier in their career. Maybe you're, you know, more senior in your career and you want to make a career transition into a new role, or you want to figure out what it takes to get to that next step. There's no better way than asking someone that's already walked down the path in which you're trying to walk down. And you'll be surprised at the amount of folks willing to help out. I have just kind of, as an example, kind of my LinkedIn resume and how I have it set up.
And then Ali, before you show your LinkedIn page, Murad has a question.
Murad, what's up?
Yeah. So on LinkedIn, do you what do you prefer? Should I just, because sometimes I feel like I don't know this person on LinkedIn. Do you recommend to like add random people to connect with random people, or just stick with people who you know?
It's a professional networking site, so people expect to receive. It's not like Facebook, right? If you randomly connect with anyone on Facebook, people might think you're a weirdo. If you're trying to connect for professional reasons on LinkedIn with people that are in the field that you're trying to get into, I feel like that's a respectful move. That's totally fine and totally okay to do. And when you request to connect with them, that's your opportunity to actually send them a note. So when you click on someone's profile, you click on connect, you have an opportunity to customize that message. And then once they do accept your connection request, if you click on their profile and you click on contact info, you have their email address and all that good stuff. But you can, more importantly, you can send them longer messages that, you know, you're open to. Once you're connected with them, you're open to message with them freely. And, you know, that's where I would recommend trying to really to connect with folks and plant your seed and grow your network. To answer your question directly, Madad, I don't think it's unacceptable. I think it's encouraged.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ali. Just a quick interruption, small interruption, if you don't mind. We might be able to go live on Facebook in the next few minutes. So just continue. And if it happens, I'm just letting everybody know that we might be live on Facebook in the next few minutes. So just continue as you are, Ali. Sorry
cool.
about that.
Thanks for the heads up, Hisham. Cool. So as just kind of an example again, you know, if you're already working for a company and you're not in the job search, I mean, you may want to represent the company you're working for by having the banner image in the background. This was actually provided to me by Robinhood. As I mentioned, you want a nice, respectable photo because this is kind of someone's first glimpse at who you are. And then you want to have that that about section, that professional summary that I was talking about, right? I have three main kind of positions that I held that I feel like are worth noting. So I quickly talk about what I did at TubeMogul in just a couple of sentences. I talk about what I did at Marqeta, and then literally just one sentence currently what I'm doing at Robinhood. And then you want to make sure when you list the company that you're working for, you want to make sure that LinkedIn autofills so it can pop up the company's logo when you're filling out where you worked. And if there is any additional media that you think is important to your accomplishments while working within those companies, for example, you know, when I worked for TubeMogul, when we went public, I shared that article. You can always just click to add media by going down here and uploading a link or uploading a file. So adding media is good. Obviously, you want to add your education. I've worked at other places before this role right here. Actually, I just added this recently. Before that, it was just all recruiting stuff. I added this just to show a little bit more diversity in regards to what I've done in my career. But again, it's similar to a resume. You shouldn't list, if you're later on in your career and you've had a lot of jobs, you shouldn't list every single thing that you've done. You know, maybe list what you've done for the last 10 years and you should be good. If you have any licenses and certifications, especially if they're sponsored by or done through, you know, well-known organizations like UC Berkeley Extension or Udemy, you want to make sure again that it autofills so you can make sure that it pops up correctly and it looks nice and clean. Again, like how your LinkedIn profile is visually represented is also a representation of how organized you are and how you represent yourself. So you want to make sure things are properly filled out. One of the things that make me cringe is literally just if someone has their first and last name up here and they don't bother to capitalize their first and last name. I see it countless times. It shows laziness. Just make sure that again, this is a visual representation of who you are. Same obviously goes for your resume. And then of course, if you have any volunteer experience, it's cool to list it down there as well. That's pretty much it on the LinkedIn front. Again, choose the right profile picture, have a great, concise, straight to the point summary about who you are, using your authentic voice and telling your story, and leveraging it to grow your network and connect with like-minded professionals as yourself. So moving on to the next phase is talking about the application and interview process. And again, this is really high level stuff, and it's not meant to go super in detail about every single step along the way, but these are some of the things that were top of mind for me, and I'd love to share with you all. The first thing that you want to do is know what role it is that you're applying to and do your research. Understand the job post and what it entails. Do your research on the company that you're applying to. I can't stress the fact of how important this is, and it seems like it's common sense, but oftentimes we do get a lot of candidates, regardless of what company I worked for, we get a lot of candidates that are just kind of, we call it spraying and praying, applying to many roles. And like we can quickly tell off the bat that the candidate didn't do, you know, just 15 minutes worth of research to understand whether or not they themselves would think if they're a good fit for the role or not. And also understanding what the company does. Take a few minutes to really dig into the job description, make sure that you understand what it is that you're applying to. You know, a good way to imagine is, okay, if they do respond and the recruiter reaches out to me and wants to interview me, I can successfully answer the question of why it is that I applied to this role. If you keep that in your head, you'll keep your job search on a somewhat good direction. And again, that's geared more towards early career, right? When you're still early career and you're trying to crack into field X, Y, or Z, this is really the information that's critical to you. When you're further along down the line in your career, you probably are 2 or 3 companies in and you've done the same thing, you know, or you stayed in the same line of work for a while. So it becomes a lot clearer as what jobs you would apply to. Like I wouldn't apply for a job as a software engineer because I need to go back to school and learn how to do that. But it's pretty obvious that I would apply to other technical recruiting positions or recruiting management positions, right? When you're still earlier in your career, you're kind of trying to identify which path you're going to go down. And on that note, you may want to hone in your search on just a few fields at first. Try to understand what you're really good at, and don't widen your job search too broadly, because then your mind will be scattered. When you hone in on just 1 or 2, you know, subsets of an overall field, you start to kind of, you know, get yourself wrapped up in that world. You start to study more on that topic, and you really have a honed in focus on trying to achieve a role within that subset. whatever that subset may be. And again, you have to start somewhere. You know, sometimes experience is what matters most. So, you know, the pay will follow with experience. And if you're still early in your career, it's hard to get a job when all you've done is just graduate from undergrad, right? So you may want to consider volunteer opportunities or internships to gain experience, at least initially. Sometimes you may end up taking a lower paying job, and understand that the pay or the reward comes with the actual experience that you're gaining. And you're going to trade in that experience 12 to 24 months down the line for a higher paying job, inshallah. It's step by step. A lot of us, oftentimes, we want to jump from step A all the way to step Z, when you got to realize you got to go through the little steps to get to kind of the bigger goals in which you're seeking. And sometimes, in all honesty, it requires taking a job that's, you know, probably doesn't pay as much upfront, but you got to realize the value that you're gaining while you're in the role. And, you know, also persistency is key. You want to be persistent. The job search is not easy, but, you know, and it's tough, and you got to be patient. And honestly, that's kind of what led me to my last bullet point on something to do when you're in the job search. It's good to have a support circle of 2 or 3 friends that are also in the job hunt. They'll be there for you to support you emotionally, and also to swap job seeking advice and leads. Like, hey, this worked really well for me when I did this. Or, hey, I noticed that company X is on a hiring spree. You should definitely apply to these jobs. And just sharing job links back and forth with each other for job opportunities that look exciting, or, you know, that your friends are looking for. It's good to have multiple eyes kind of on the streets instead of trying to go at it alone and by yourself. A couple of don'ts, and kind of on my earlier topic of knowing what to apply for, is I mentioned don't spam apply to several openings at the same company. Oftentimes we get candidates that apply for, I kid you not, like over 10 roles with the same company. Imagine how that looks on the receiving end, right? You're in HR, you're in recruiting, and you see the same name pop up for 10 different roles. That leads me to believe that this candidate doesn't know what they want. And, you know, it's an immediate turnoff, put it that way. Yeah, again, recruiters will see this and think you yourself are unsure of what you want to do. And the last thing I just say is, you know, don't give up. Your opportunity will come. And, you know, I really wish you all the best. And I hope that today's presentation was helpful. And on that note, I'm happy to stick around and take more Q&A and just have overall, you know, just discussion on job search in general.
And then Ali, can you go to did you have that one slide with the hyperlinks?
Right here?
I just wanted to quickly let everybody know that this PowerPoint slide presentation is going to be shared on Facebook's website right after the presentation is over. And these bullet points right here are just basically in-depth lectures with Ibrahim, who I believe is with us today. And the video for each one of these hyperlinks are very kind of methodical, and kind of, it gives you a step-by-step process on how to write a resume, you know, how to write a cover letter, improving your interview skills. So it's kind of what Ali did today, similar to what Ali did today, with a business/finance lens, and just more, just a little bit more, more of a micro approach on things. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that this resource is going to be on Facebook. This whole presentation is going to be on Facebook, hopefully by the end of today.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Ali. We really appreciate it. We have received a bunch of questions that came to us early on. Some of these questions are pertaining to those individuals who are switching careers. what would be your best advice for students or young graduating students? So number one is those that are graduating recently without any previous job experiences, and then other professionals who are switching careers, let's say moving from one industry to a next, or penetrating the tech industry. Since you are from the tech industry, you can give more color on that front as well.
Yeah. So if I understood you correctly, so advice for new grads trying to crack in and advice for people trying to segue into a different field.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you.
So on the new grad front, it's really competitive. Like even with internships, as you may have experienced, you want to go apply for an internship and you don't get any callbacks. Try to get creative. Reach out and network over LinkedIn to folks that work at certain companies and let them know that you'd be willing to work for free if you're open to it. Like if you're just trying to gain volunteer experience, that would be my recommendation, or even just kind of your own projects on the side. If you're a software engineer, for example, new grad, CS new grad, like have a showcase of all of the different projects that you've worked on and use that to try to get your foot in the door. Try to get creative to build some type of experience that's relevant to the role that you're trying to apply to, because that builds a bridge to kind of step one, which is an entry-level role. If you're trying to go in it alone with just the degree by itself, it's becoming more and more challenging because there are several other people in your same shoes. So it has to be the degree plus one, right? It's a degree plus, hey, I did this side project for this tech company on the side and they loved it, right? Or another example is, on the question about segueing into a different career, right? Because something that's top of mind for me is the boot camp thing. The whole boot camp, learning to be a software developer in 16 weeks. App Academy is, for example, is one of those. That's something that I see as kind of like a +1. Okay, I was a software engineer. Unfortunately, it was overseas, so it's not seen on the same bar as like being a software engineer in the US, but I'm a software engineer overseas, plus I did, a boot camp here in San Francisco. That +1 is combining your previous experience and it's all about trying to have more than the next candidate, right? So on the topic of moving over to different careers, it's somewhat related. You got to build a bridge to get to that next career. No one will just give you an opportunity based off of your experience as a mechanical engineer to all of a sudden be a doctor in my hospital, right? Figure out what that bridge is that's needed to be built to connect the mechanical engineering experience with that experience in a health-related field. So that's kind of like my high-level advice, is understanding what those steps are in between each pathway to continue going deep on one road.
Thank you, Ali. We have a good number of attendees here in this Zoom room. I would encourage those who want to ask questions right away to turn on their cameras if they can, possibly. And we have guests here that can also add more context based on their experience. We apologize. Out. Ali, you're back?
I am back.
Yeah, so I was just saying, for those who are in the room, if they have any questions they want to ask and turn on their camera to make it more interactive. We have a lot of members here that are also managers in tech companies. If they can give more color based on their experiences and add more to what you said, Ali, that would be helpful for the others in the room. But
Go ahead, Mohammed Al-Beggan.
Hey guys, Ali, thanks for doing this talk. Really insightful stuff. I fall in the bucket of recent grad facing the reality of not being able to find that dream job. So an issue that I kind of faced is, so after receiving the initial contact from HR, what are some things a candidate can do, or what are some things a candidate should avoid in having those initial, not the tech screenings, but just the talks with, you know, the HR reps, and what are they looking for in those 30 minutes?
That's a really good question. Thank you for the question, Mohammed. Trying to be concise, you know, avoiding rambling. I mean, I ramble myself when I get nervous, but it's good to have, you know, just index cards next to you, trying to touch on all of your points that you want to touch on, and really efficiency and conciseness with the recruiter. That's what I would recommend. I hope that helps.
Definitely being concise and not rambling. Yeah.
And of course, the night, you know, a couple of days before, the night before, you want to review what you're going to talk about. And again, you want to know what the company does and why you applied to the position. A lot of people, I understand, like, we need jobs, we need to work, we need to make money. But a lot of times people are applying for that as their like top motivating factor, and their driving factors that, you know, I just need this job. You don't want to lead with that. You want to kind of mask that and try to come from a place of passion, and let the person on the other end of the line understand, you know, why you're putting yourself in front of them. And that would be kind of like my recommendation. I think that goes a long way. Somehow, some way, trying to get people to see your true self and hear your true voice. I think that's valued tremendously. If you come off as robotic and you start to ramble, and you sound like everyone else at that point.
Agreed. Yeah, no, those are good tips, especially when you have so many applications and it's like one of hundreds, and then you have to maintain that passion. Thanks, Ali. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question. Yeah, it's refreshing to a recruiter when they connect with someone that, you know, it feels like they're talking to someone they know already. And that comes out by sharing your true voice, and, you know, sharing what your true intentions are, why you applied and what you're looking for.
Right. Just differentiating yourself. Yeah, I can see that totally.
For sure.
Ali, just a quick question.
Yeah.
So I want to get into to HR, and what do you think is like an entry level position into like getting more experience into you know, to get to a higher position?
So HR specifically, and obviously since I'm in HR, I feel like I can speak to this with a little bit more confidence, right? You got to look at HR as an umbrella, and under that umbrella of HR, there are these different pillars and different subsets of HR. I would start there. You know, when I was getting ready to graduate college, or as a matter of fact, when I was sophomore year in college, when I decided to major in sociology, I knew I wanted to drive myself towards a career in HR. And once I made that decision, I started to research more about human resources, and I uncovered that, okay, there's a lot more to it. These are all of the different subsets. And then I started gravitating towards recruiting, because I felt like, honestly, I just felt like that was the funnest job that I can have within human resources, and it paid really well. And you get to connect with people day in and day out. And I like to connect with people, and it came from a place of passion. So I started building upon that. And the first job I took, man, it was, I was chewed up and spit out as a recruiter at the staffing agency. It's not a very glamorous job. It's very, you know, kind of like, what have you done for me lately? Your success is quickly forgotten, and you got to just quickly hustle all the time, because a lot of it was commission driven. But I did that for a year and a half, and I was commuting from basically the Hilltop Mall area in Richmond all the way to San Bruno. And at the time, I was a new parent. I just had, you know, my oldest son. But man, I just sacrificed, and I went through with it because I knew I was gaining valuable experience. And without that experience, I never would have got to Tube Mogul. And without Tube Mogul, I would have never got to Marquetta. Without Marquetta, I never would have got to where I'm at today at Robinhood. And I hope that shows an example of, you know, kind of following a path of building blocks. You're not going to find that dream job straight out of college. Some of you will, some of you won't, but the majority, like realistically speaking, you want to find a foundational block within HR. First, start doing your research on the different areas of HR, find opportunities that can be that foundation for you, and then take it from there.
Okay, and this last question. So for basically for recruiting, do you think in order for you to, well, like the higher positions that you get into, is it like working for other companies, or is it like, for example, for you, right? You as a recruiter, basically the first year as a recruiter, what were you trying to aim for? Are you trying to aim for it to get higher to get into a better company, or is it something else?
Yeah, it was obviously growth and progression within my field. So taking on more challenges and being a part of a company to recruit for that same company. So we call that going in-house, right? So I wanted to go in-house to recruit directly for a company so I can see the progression and see the company build over the multiple years that I was there. When I was on the staffing agency side, you recruit, you get a candidate, and you place them at you're a third party. So you're constantly finding candidates and you're putting them into all these different companies, and you get paid every time you find someone a job. So naturally, if you're being motivated by a commission-based role, all of a sudden your focus on quality is going to go down and you're going to focus on quantity. I just need to find as many candidates as possible, get them in the mix so I can, make money for the company and do well. So I share that to say that I quickly fell in love with recruiting, but I totally disrespected the business model of a staffing agency. I wanted to recruit because I actually wanted to help build companies build great products. So my goal, or at least what I had in mind, is kind of moving on up or forward progression, Murad, was going in-house and working for a company. And I applied to like Google and Facebook, like right after working at Apex, but my resume never got any callbacks. No one wanted someone that's fresh out of a staffing agency. So I took the route of working for a smaller startup. This is actually relevant to a lot of you software engineers out there as well. It's a lot easier to land a role in a startup because they're still relatively unknown. It's less competition, and you can try your luck there. And also you'll probably gain a lot more hands-on experience because there's less people doing more. You're going to wear multiple hats. So again, it's trying to find those foundational building blocks, finding people that will take a chance on you. And for me, it just happened to be an in-house recruiting role at a smaller startup until I got where I'm at today.
Thank you.
Okay, so Ali, within your space, how much of the hiring is based on actually recruiting, finding candidates that your team go headhunting, as opposed to receiving applications and going through hundreds of applicants?
Well, that's a really good question. That depends on the role. Me, for example, the team that I'm on at Robinhood, we don't use job posts. We don't really advertise. Yeah. It's all strategic headhunting when it's at the executive level. When it's entry level all the way up to, seniors and leads and engineering managers, and it depends on the company. Every company does it differently, but for a lot of the high volume roles, the jobs are posted. We do see incoming applicants, and hires are definitely made through all different pipelines, whether it was a referral, whether it was an incoming applicant. Now, if you want me to share just kind of generalized breakdowns of where the most hires come from, and this is why I said it's good to network. Number one source of hire is always referrals for all of the companies that I've worked at, or at least for the most part.
Internal referrals from the company.
Yeah, I haven't. Again, it's not representative of Robinhood or anything, but from previous experience prior to Robinhood, our highest source of hire is always through internal referrals. There's the age-old saying that it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's true to a certain extent. You still got to know your stuff, right? You can't just, I'm going to hire my friend and bring them in here, but they don't have the skills necessary. But half the battle is just getting your foot in the door and holding it open, and then showcasing your skills to burst on through that door. So that's why I highly encourage networking. It doesn't even have to be a strong referral. If someone is willing to take a 15 to 20 minute coffee chat with you to get to know you, more than likely they'll be willing to help refer you. A lot of company employees, they get rewards, or they actually get paid for making referrals. And if it's a software engineering role, like, companies are paying in the thousands of dollars. If I wasn't a recruiter, for example, if I was like, I don't know, a project manager working at Marqeta, right? and I were to refer a software engineer, I would get paid $5,000 as a Marqeta employee on top of my salary for helping the company find another software engineer. Or whatever the amount is. If it's a non-technical role, it's probably a little bit less. But I share this to show that employees at companies, specifically within the tech space, are incentivized to go out and recruit with the recruiters, even if you're not technically a recruiter. So networking with people at these companies just makes it easier for them to submit referrals. They'd be happy to.
Amazing. I have more questions, but I want to open the door for others.
Ali, I have a very important question. Let's talk about the salary, right? Most of the job descriptions that I look at, they don't show the salaries, right? And that's what throws me off. Like 95% of the times, they won't show you the salary on the job description. So what do you recommend to do? Like, how do you find what is the salary that fits that job description?
You can always, Google's your best friend. You'd be surprised at what you can find online about reported salaries. If you're in the tech space specifically, like there are apps like Blind where you can communicate blindly, anonymously with other engineers at other companies. And again, it's all about networking or asking people, right? Murad, you're interested in getting recruiting. Maybe we can connect and I can tell you what are the salary ranges. There's nothing better than getting it from the source. What I would say though, is be careful about being too picky on compensation up front before fully exploring whether or not this opportunity is interesting for you, right? See if there's a fit based off of the opportunity alone, and then take care of the logistics later, if you're willing to invest your time.
Thank you.
But if you're a new grad, man, don't be picky, especially if you're not in a dire need and you absolutely need to make a certain amount. If experience is what you're looking for, you should. If experience is truly what you need up front, then make that a lower priority. Make compensation a lower priority.
Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit more? Because culturally, right, when we graduate as Yemenis, when we graduate from college, we're expected either family obligations or cultural obligations. Well, this person graduated from college. He or she's supposed to be in the work field making money right away. But can you kind of stress the importance of non-paid internships and how that's financially an investment for the future? But I know some of us culturally, we can't invest a year in, or a few months, we have to start making money right away. But even if we're not making money right away, can you kind of stress the investment importance of non-paid internships?
That's a really good point, especially from the cultural perspective, right? Everyone wants to make millions and millions of dollars right after they graduate. And every Yemeni mother and father wants their son or daughter to be super, super successful upon graduation. But we're, in our generation, it's not about where you start, right? It's really about where you finish in the progress along the way. If you're continuously taking steps upward, and you see that upward mobility, then guess what? Each day is better than the day previous, right? If one of the most important things is having enough money to stay afloat, you got bills, you're married, you got to do this, you got to do that. Internships, most of the time, they can be part-time. They're not full-time. With all of these gig working opportunities that exist, push yourself to the limits. You can make money driving Uber or shopping for Instacart on the side while committing 20 hours a week to a startup that pays you, less than what you would desire. But that 20 hours a week is going to end up paying you tenfold what you're making through all of these gig opportunities a year or two down the line. That's kind of my recommendations. You got to take care of the table stake items. You got to make enough money to pay your bills. You got to hustle and figure that out. But a lot of times we get caught in this trap where that's all we want to do, and we don't want to seek this continuous upwards progression because we're not patient enough to do it. If you do it one step at a time, it's not about where you start, it's about the progression and where you ultimately end up. And then mom and dad can be happy and proud of you once you're working at one of these big name companies and making all the the tons of dough.
Incredible. Thank you very much. One more question I have, and I think Muhammad, you might want to start wrapping up. I think this is going to be beneficial for everybody that will be watching this later on, or even now. If we focus on the roles that are, highly publicized, they get hundreds, sometimes thousands, I'm not sure, in some roles. I'm sure there is some automated process to filter out the resumes or the applicants that are not a fit. Can you just give us an overall view of the process that companies, whether it's Robinhood or any of the other big companies, of processing large number of applicants for one role? Like what does it look like, that process?
In my personal experience, I think that's a myth. We don't use any special algorithms or keyword search that automatically rejects or filters people. But again, this is my perspective and based off of where I worked. Maybe Google does things differently or Facebook does things differently. I'm not sure. What I can tell you though, is when we go out to seek prospective candidates, to send them emails through LinkedIn, because recruiters, they use the paid version of LinkedIn to send out messages to prospective candidates that is built off of keywords. So I have a special UI that is from LinkedIn, and I put in different keywords and it can help me find the right type of profile. That's also just another reason to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date, because you may end up getting, people reaching out to you and hitting you up about potential job opportunities. So the more keywords that you have in there, and again, don't just throw a whole bunch of fluff in there, add your relevant keywords. If you're a software engineer and you add the core programming languages, I'm a backend developer, I know Java, just make sure to throw it in there. You never know. It can be helpful and it might pull you up in a search or two. But as far as weeding out applicants, Hisham, I think that's a myth. I've never seen that from the places that I've worked at. Candidates aren't automatically filtered out based off of the keyword searches, and each resume is manually looked at by a recruiter, by a set of eyes. And that's just even more reason to have a shorter resume, so you can ensure that all of your highlights are quickly looked at and reviewed. And again, it's your elevator pitch, as discussed when we first kicked off this seminar.
All right, well, thank you for that, Ali, especially that last point, because a lot of people are worried about AI searches and algorithms and worried about what keywords they can put in. But it sounds like from your experience, you haven't seen a whole lot of that. So we want to thank Ali and the time that he dedicated for presenting all this very valuable information for us today. We also want to thank Hisham, the president, that set up everything for today. I also, in the chat, I put the link to the presentation that also has Ibrahim's lecture videos. Again, Ibrahim is another national board member of AAYSP. He worked with the Federal Reserve in New York. And basically, it's a step-by-step resume, cover letter, and interview application process. But they're a little bit longer, the video lectures. So that's an incredible resource to have, as well as the presentation. Thank you guys for your questions for today. And if you guys have any more questions, you guys can reach out to either me or Hisham on Facebook, or even Ali on Facebook or LinkedIn. Thank you guys so much. And if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and sign out and tell you guys to all have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.